They said I was a drunk, a deserter, a ghost not worth remembering. But ghosts know how to haunt. I was never the sentimental type. Didn't care much for birthdays, holidays, or framed world's best dad mugs. I've lived 78 years in a world that rewards silence, not smiles. And silence, well, I've always been fluent in it. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching from. Name's Bob Selvers. Dallas, Texas. Retired Army intelligence. Twice divorced, once widowed. 2 kids I don't trust, 4 grandkids I barely know, and a face in the mirror that looks more like my father's every day, weathered, cracked, and not in the mood for nonsense. I like my coffee black, my mornings quiet, and my front porch free of people. The only thing worse than small talk is fake people making it. Which brings me to last Sunday. I was sitting on the porch, watching the neighbor's dog crap on my lawn again, when old Gus from next door waddled over with that smirk he wears when he's got something to stir. "You hear what your boy said on KDFW this morning?" he asked, scratching his belly like it owed him money. "No, Gus, I was too busy polishing my Nobel Prize," I muttered. "What did the prince say now?" He was on the radio, talking about his campaign. Said, and I quote, "My father's mistakes made me stronger. He was never a role model, but he taught me who not to become." I stared at him. "Want me to find the recording?" Gus offered, already pulling out his phone. "No need," I said, standing up slowly. "I believe you. That bastard's never told a lie he didn't love." That night, I poured myself 2 fingers of wild turkey and sat in my den, lights off, radio off, the kind of silence that presses on your chest like a boot. My son, Stephen Goddamn Selvers, was a rising star in Texas politics. Local councilman, now running for state senate, family man, church-going, wrinkle-free and media-trained like a showroom mannequin, and apparently orphaned, at least according to his version of things. This wasn't the first time he'd thrown shade at me. He never invited me to events, told his donors I was estranged, made up some story about growing up in an abusive household. Hell, the man had reporters believing I was a dropout who beat his wife and abandoned the family during Desert Storm. Problem is, none of it's true. I served 23 years. Top secret clearance. Ran Black Ops in Cold War Berlin. I was married 42 years to the same woman until cancer took her. Raised 2 kids, paid for college, stayed clean, never touched a drop of liquor while in uniform. But facts don't sell. Pity does. Martyrdom does. And Stephen figured out early on that it's easier to build a perfect image if your past has no shadows, or if you burn those shadows to the ground. Next morning, I drove to the Dallas Veterans History Archive. Little beige building no one notices unless they're lost or old. Inside, it smells like photocopiers and unwashed carpet. I donated my service records there 10 years ago, full transcripts, commendations, even a letter from the Secretary of Defense. They said it would be part of Texas's legacy. When I asked for the files, the young volunteer behind the desk typed my name, frowned, typed again. Then again, nothing's coming up under Selvers, Robert G. "Try Bob," I said. Maybe they used my nickname. Still nothing. She called a supervisor. 20 minutes later, a man in khakis with a clipboard told me the hard drive containing my documents had been accidentally reformatted 2 years ago. "Everything from that period's been wiped, sir." "I'm so sorry, right?" I left without another word. But as I reached the parking lot, something inside me clicked. I remembered Stephen's intern, a smug little Ivy League brat who used to come by to help organize the house. I remembered how he'd borrowed my medals for a display. I never saw them again. I remembered how the library had requested permission to digitize my audio debriefings and how Stephen had insisted he'd handle it. I hadn't lost my legacy. It had been erased. That night, I pulled a weathered lockbox from the crawl space under the stairs. It hadn't seen daylight in over a decade. Inside were 2 things that still mattered. 1. A cassette tape, my mission recording from East Berlin, 1973. 2. A phone number, handwritten in blue ink, fading, but still legible. Jack, Icebox, Harlow, 43rd Recon, Houston. Jack had been my spotter, my backup, and my last friend in uniform. We hadn't spoken in years, but if anyone still had proof I was the man they were trying to delete, it was him. I stared at the number, then picked up the landline and dialed. 3 rings. Then a gravelly voice, half whiskey, half war. Yeah, Jack. It's Bob. Pause. Then, Bob Selvers. The one and only. I thought you were dead. Not yet. But someone's trying to kill my past. Meet me in Houston, Jack said. And bring the tape. If they want war, let's give them the cold kind. The drive from Dallas to Houston used to feel long. Not anymore. When you're fueled by the kind of slow, white-hot anger that doesn't raise its voice, just simmers behind your ribs, distance disappears. 3 hours, 2 gas station coffees, and 1 cheap sandwich later, I pulled into the parking lot of a 1-story VFW lodge with peeling paint and a sagging flag out front. A man was already sitting on the bench outside. Aviator shades, camo jacket 3 sizes too big, and a plastic oxygen tube running up into his nose like a leash. Jack, icebox, Harlow. 81. Lungs like overcooked brisket. Still sharper than any knife I ever carried. He stood slowly as I stepped out of the truck. You look like hell. Better than being a ghost. We shook hands. His grip was soft, arthritis, but the fire in his eyes hadn't dimmed. We didn't waste time. Inside, past the dusty bar and trophy cases, we sat in the back room, door locked, blinds shut. Jack placed a battered briefcase on the table and opened it with a key I hadn't seen in 40 years. Inside were folders, cassettes, a worn manila envelope with Operation Bitter Glass scrawled on the front. I kept it all, Jack said. They told me to destroy the audio. I told them I would, then didn't. He slid the envelope toward me. You sure about this? No, I said. But I'm sure I'm tired of being erased. We spent the next 5 hours listening to our younger voices echo out of that tape deck like ghosts climbing out of a grave. Crackling transmissions in German. My voice issuing orders. Jack's warning about compromised tunnels. Screams. Gunshots. The sound of us pulling 3 American hostages out of a concrete basement behind the Iron Curtain. Proof. Not a story. Not a scrapbook. Real, living proof. I took notes while Jack copied everything onto a USB. He even printed out the debriefing transcripts on an old dot matrix printer that sounded like it was dying with every line. When we finished, he leaned back and lit a cigarette right under the no smoking sign. You going after your son with this? I looked at the tape. At the name Selvers etched into the label in my wife's handwriting. He's not my son anymore, I said. He's a fraud in my skin. And he's going to choke on the truth. Back in Dallas the next evening, I sat down at my desk. Not the cheap pine one in the kitchen where I paid bills, but the one in my den. Oak. Heavy. The kind of thing people don't build anymore. I laid it all out. Audio from 1973. The printed transcripts with my signature and rank. Copies of my commendations, nettle receipts, and award ceremony footage. Thank you, Jack, for that VHS. To MP4 magic. And finally, the kicker, a scanned, notarized statement from Lieutenant Colonel Bruce Templeton confirming I'd served under him in clandestine ops and had my name removed from public record for mission integrity. It was everything Stephen had tried to erase, reconstructed. I uploaded the files to 3 separate cloud drives. Then I made 2 flash drives, one for a lawyer, one for the press. Then I picked up the phone and called Stephen's campaign office. Selvers for Texas, the young woman chirped. How can I help? Put Stephen on, I said. Tell him it's his father. The one he's been pretending is dead. Silence. Then a shuffle. Then, Dad, he sounded cautious. Like a man opening a package that might contain either cookies or a grenade. I have some things to return, I said. Things you lost. Dad, I think dash, don't speak. Just listen, a beat of silence. Then I continued. You buried my name, my service, my story. You told lies to build a throne and assumed I was too old or too tired to notice. You were wrong. Dad dash, I've got records, Stephen. Voices on tape. Signatures. Statements from men you'll never be. I could hear him breathing now. Faster. I didn't want this war, I said. But you started it. So here's how it ends. I'm giving you 48 hours to step down. End your campaign. Publicly apologize. Or the next time you see my name, it'll be on the news, right above yours. You wouldn't, he hissed. You'd ruin your own family name. You already did, I said. I'm just taking it back. I hung up. My hands weren't shaking. Not anymore. The next morning, I mailed the flash drives. One to the Dallas Observer, addressed to their investigative reporter. The other to a local attorney who once helped a group of veterans sue a pharmaceutical giant and win. The storm was coming either way. I just picked where the lightning would strike first. Stephen's press conference came that afternoon. I watched from the comfort of my porch, whiskey in hand, dog asleep at my feet. I regret to announce I am suspending my campaign, he said stiffly. After new revelations concerning my father's military history, I realize I acted without full understanding. Lies still, but weaker now. Cracked. The reporter didn't let up. Mr. Selvers, did you knowingly falsify your father's past to gain political advantage? Stephen blinked. I was misinformed. By whom? Pause. My team. He looked like a man who'd just bitten into glass. Good. I leaned back, took a sip, and muttered to no one in particular, You faked my obituary, son. But I wrote yours with a cassette tape. I thought the silence would feel sweeter. After all, I'd shut him down. Wrecked his campaign. Pulled the rug out from under him in broad daylight, in front of cameras, donors, supporters, the whole damn parade. But silence has moods. And that night it sat heavy, not victorious, just thick. Like smoke after a house fire, nothing left to burn, but the stench still lingers. I sat in my kitchen, lights off, drinking tea because whiskey would keep me up. Not from caffeine, from memories. Memories don't ask for permission. They just come. My wife, Annie, used to say I looked like a man who held secrets in his bones. She wasn't wrong. There are things I've never told anyone. Things Stephen doesn't even know existed. Things I did, not out of pride or patriotism, but necessity. The kind of decisions you don't put in memoirs. The kind that stain you. But Stephen didn't care about truth. He cared about image, control, appearances. And now, those appearances were crumbling. By Friday, the campaign office had been cleared out. The website taken down. The campaign manager, some overpaid consultant from Austin, released a bland statement about internal miscommunication and a respectful withdrawal, but not Stephen. Stephen stayed quiet. That made me nervous. I know my son. He was born with a silver tongue and a spine made of ambition. When he's quiet, he's planning. And sure enough, Sunday morning, a sheriff's cruiser pulled into my driveway. I watched from the window, cup of tea going cold in my hand. Two deputies stepped out, clean-shaven, young, wearing expressions like they were delivering flowers, not subpoenas. Knock. Knock. I opened the door before they could do it again. Mr. Selvers? The taller one asked. You knocked. That's rare, I said. What do you want? We have a summons. Civil case filed in Dallas County. Plaintiff alleges defamation, invasion of privacy, and unlawful dissemination of confidential materials. I let out a small laugh. Stephen was suing me. Of course he was. They handed me the envelope. I didn't even look at it. Just tossed it on the kitchen table and said, Tell him thanks. I'll send flowers to the courthouse. They left without saying more. I respected that. Professionals doing a job. Not like my son. I finally opened the packet that night. 3 things stood out. 1, he wasn't just suing me. He was accusing me of stealing classified government documents. 2, he'd filed the case under a sealed motion, meaning the public couldn't see the details, only the headlines. 3, he'd attached a psychiatric affidavit claiming I was mentally unwell, that I was suffering cognitive decline and acting irrationally, and had a long history of paranoia stemming from unprocessed trauma. That line hit harder than any subpoena. Not because it was true, but because he knew it would stick. I'd always been sharp, painfully so, but now, people wouldn't question it. I was 78, widowed, living alone, a little bitter, a little off. The stereotype wrote itself. He was trying to paint me as senile. And worse, if the court ruled me mentally unfit, he could try to seize power of attorney. Take everything. House. Finances. The story. Erase me, legally this time. So I called Jack. He didn't answer the first 3 times. Probably asleep or too busy yelling at the squirrels in his yard. 4th time, he picked up. You ever get sued by your own kid? I asked. Long pause. Then, no, but I did stab mine with a salad fork once. He stole my last Slim Jim. I smiled despite myself. This isn't about money anymore, Jack. He's trying to have me declared unfit. Mentally unstable. Silence. Then, Jack's voice dropped low. You need someone who remembers. What? Someone besides me. Someone official. Who can testify that you were part of those ops? That the files are real. That you're not making this up. Problem is, most of them are dead. Jack was quiet again. Then he muttered, not all of them. The next day, Jack sent me a name. Major Glenn Braddock. Army Intelligence. Retired. Lives in Amarillo now. Former mission coordinator. He'd signed off on the Operation Bitter Glass final report. If anyone could confirm my mental state, my service history, and the validity of my records, it was Braddock. I called. He answered on the second ring. Selvers, he said without surprise. Was wondering when you'd come knocking. We met in Amarillo 2 days later. His house looked like a bunker. Steel doors, solar panels, security cameras everywhere. Paranoia or preparation? I asked. He smirked. Survival. He led me into a converted garage packed with filing cabinets, more memorabilia, and a vintage shortwave radio humming low in the corner. I heard what your boy's doing, he said. Saw the press conference. Man's got a gift for lying. He got it from me, I muttered. Braddock opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. Stamped, retired, classified, restricted. Inside, the full bitter glass dossier. Names, photos, satellite scans, field notes. I kept it, he said. Didn't trust the brass to tell the right version. Always knew someone tried to twist it. I stared at the folder. Then at him. You willing to testify? I am. But not just for you. For Annie too. She used to send us coffee cakes. Said you were too skinny for war. My throat tightened. First time in years I wanted to cry. Didn't. Couldn't. Back in Dallas, my lawyer, a young pit bull named Marcy Tran, filed a response to the lawsuit. In it, we included Braddock's signed affidavit, a medical evaluation from a neurologist stating I was sharper than most men 20 years younger, and the full declassified file from Operation Bitter Glass, now public record. We didn't just fight back. We nuked the field. Stephen wanted a courtroom. I gave him a firing squad, and the only witness left standing would be the man he tried to bury alive. Courtrooms always smelled the same to me, like overpolished wood, old coffee, and fear dressed up in nice shoes. The day of the hearing, I wore my army blazer. Not the new one, the old one, the one with real dust from real places. Medals pinned not for show, for blood, for dirt, for men who never came back. I walked in alone. Didn't need anyone to hold my hand. Marcy, my lawyer, waited inside, already flipping through her binder like a blackjack dealer with a grudge. Stephen was already there too. Blue suit, red tie, not a hair out of place. He didn't look at me, but I saw his jaw tense when I walked in. He wasn't used to seeing me like this, composed, grounded, unbreakable. He was hoping I'd come in hunched over, confused. He needed the image of a broken old man. What he got was a man who had nothing left to lose and all the truth in the world. Judge Callahan, mid-60s, sharp as a tack, gray bun pulled tight like a no-nonsense librarian, opened the hearing. This court is convened to examine the plaintiff's claims of defamation and mental instability filed against the defendant, Robert G. Selvers. She looked over her glasses at me. Mr. Selvers, do you understand the nature of the claim? I understand, Your Honor, I said. My son thinks I've lost my mind because I exposed his lies. Stephen's lawyer stood. Some puffed-up suburban peacock in a $1,000 jacket and alligator shoes. Objection to the characterization, he sniffed. Noted, the judge said. Sit down. I liked her already. Stephen's side went first. They paraded out two campaign aides, one who claimed I had an aggressive temper and another who said I once threatened to leak fake war documents to sabotage a political career. Then came the psychiatrist. Young, polished, corporate. Probably never even heard a gunshot outside a movie theater. He said I exhibited classic signs of paranoid delusion, amplified by advanced age and isolation. Marcy didn't flinch. She waited. Then she stood and said four words that flipped the room. Call Major Glenn Braddock. Braddock entered like an avalanche in dress blues. Every medal was real. Every step meant something. The silence in the courtroom shifted. People recognized the weight of a man like that. Under oath, he laid it all out. That I had served with honor. That Operation Bitter Glass was real. That my debriefings had been classified, not erased. That I was of sound mind, capable of discerning reality from fiction. That Stephen had contacted him 3 years ago, asking if some of the more sensitive reports could be kept out of the public eye if his father's history were to accidentally disappear. Stephen's lawyer stammered. The judge scribbled furiously. Then came the final nail. Braddock pulled out a flash drive. This is a redacted release from the Department of Defense. It confirms Mr. Selvers' service, operations, and psychological clearance as of last year. Judge Callahan took it, inserted it. Read, then leaned back. I see no grounds for the plaintiff's mental competency claim. And frankly, she glanced at Stephen. This looks more like an abuse of the court than a legitimate concern for family welfare. Stephen's face turned a color I hadn't seen since he broke his leg falling off a jungle gym in 3rd grade. But the worst was still coming. Because Marcy stood up one last time and said, Your Honor, with the court's permission, we'd like to enter an additional exhibit, a statement from the Veterans Historical Society confirming that the plaintiff submitted a request to purge Mr. Selvers' files from the public archive under the pretense of national security risk. Stephen leapt up. That's a lie. The judge banged her gavel once. Sit down, Mr. Selvers. He didn't. So I stood. I told you, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The truth has teeth. He stared at me. That cold, calculating look finally cracked. Underneath the polished surface, there was just a scared little boy who got caught playing with matches near gasoline. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching from. The judge didn't rule that day. She said she'd issue a written decision within the week. But I didn't need to wait, because that night, the media got hold of it. Dallas Herald, front page, decorated war veteran accuses son of attempted erasure, courtroom firestorm exposes truth, local radio played excerpts from Braddock's testimony. My old tape, cleaned up by Jack, went viral on YouTube under the title, This is the voice my son tried to silence. Over 300,000 views in 2 days. Veterans groups called. Even old enemies reached out to say they remembered me, that I mattered, that I wasn't alone. Stephen, meanwhile, went underground. His name became radioactive. Donors vanished. Endorsements dropped. And then, the real twist, an investigation was opened. Turns out, trying to tamper with military records? Not a smart idea. Especially when done through a friend of a friend in a public archive system tied to federal databases. Braddock had made a few calls of his own, and now the story was out of my hands, just like I wanted it. He tried to erase a soldier to invent a politician. Now he's watching both burn, and this time, I'm not offering him cover. It was a Tuesday when I saw his face again on the news. Not in a suit, not on a podium, not in one of those smug campaign ads where he called himself a man of integrity. No, this time it was a mugshot. Stephen E. Selvers, 52, charged with falsification of federal records, obstruction of historical archives, and attempted fraud. I sat there at my kitchen table, spoon halfway to my mouth, bowl of oatmeal gone cold. The anchor's voice was flat, like she didn't know whether to be shocked or amused. Authorities say Mr. Selvers may have knowingly conspired to remove and alter classified historical records for personal gain. Investigators are also examining whether campaign donors were involved in the cover-up. There it was. No spin. No saving it. No team to bury the story this time. I leaned back, stared at the ceiling, and muttered, "Told you, boy. The truth always shows up. Sometimes late, but never empty-handed." The next few days were a whirlwind, but not for me. I didn't leave the house. Didn't answer the phone. Not even when journalists came knocking. One left a business card in my mailbox with a note. "We love your side of the story, Mr. Selvers. You're a hero to a lot of people right now." I tossed the card in the trash. Let the story tell itself. I wasn't doing this for fame. I did it because he tried to erase Annie. Because he tried to sell a false version of himself by dragging my legacy into the gutter. Because some things a man doesn't walk away from, no matter how old, how tired, or how alone. But not everyone stayed away. That Thursday, late afternoon, I heard a knock I hadn't heard in years. Soft. Hesitant. Not like the deputies or the reporters. I opened the door. It was Emily, my granddaughter, oldest of the four. 25 now, maybe 26. She used to sit on my lap while I read her military comic books. Back when she thought I was cooler than Captain America, we hadn't spoken in years. Not since her father started spinning his new narrative and she stopped visiting. She stood on my porch holding a grocery bag. "Hi, Grandpa," she said. Her voice cracked on the last syllable. I didn't say anything, just opened the screen door wider and stepped aside. She walked in like the house had ghosts, which it did. "I brought you some stuff," she said, placing the bag on the counter. "Soup. Tea. That bread you used to like from the market?" I nodded once. Sat down. She joined me. I didn't know," she said finally. "About all of it." "I know," I said. "You weren't supposed to," she winced. "He said you were unstable, paranoid, bitter." "I've heard the script." She looked down at her hands. "I feel stupid." "Don't," I said. "He fooled a lot of people." "But not you," she whispered. "No, not me." Silence fell between us, but it didn't feel heavy this time. Just honest. Then she said something I wasn't ready for. "I saw the video. The recording. You sounded calm, clear." I let out a dry laugh. "That's what war teaches you. Be calm when it counts. Be dangerous when it matters." She blinked. "Emily," I said, leaning forward, "you're old enough to know now. Truth is never convenient. That's why people run from it." She nodded. "I just wish I hadn't waited so long to come back." I looked at her then, really looked. She had Annie's eyes. "People come back when they're ready," I said. "Not before." Before she left, she stood in the doorway like she wanted to say something else. "You know, Grandpa, you're not what people say." I gave a half smile. "Neither are most people," and then she was gone. That night, I found the old family photo, the one from 1992. Me, Annie, Stephen, and a very tiny Emily on my lap, tugging at my metal ribbon. I set it on the mantel. Just for that night. I didn't forgive Stephen. I wasn't that generous. But I remembered the man he used to be, before politics, before ambition, and I wondered if there was anything left of him under all that rot. I doubted it. 3 days later, Marcy called. "You sitting down?" she asked. "Always." Stephen made a deal. Of course he did. He pleads guilty to 3 charges, pays restitution, resigns from public office permanently, and agrees to a 5-year ban from political activity. In exchange, no jail time. "No jail?" I asked. "First-time offender. Federal cooperation. You know how it works." "Yeah, I did." "And there's more," she added. "He's releasing a public statement. Admitting to everything." I raised an eyebrow. "Voluntarily. Court-ordered." Now that made me smile. The man who tried to rewrite my life now had to say, out loud, to the entire world, my father was right. The statement came out on a Monday. Mid-morning. Just enough time for every news outlet to grab it, headline it, and blast it across every screen in Texas before lunchtime. It was short, probably written by a lawyer, but the words still hit like a steel toe to the gut. I, Stephen E. Selvers, knowingly misrepresented my father's military service, altered federal records, and attempted to manipulate public perception for political gain. I deeply regret my actions. My father's legacy is one of honor and courage. I failed to honor that. And I accept full responsibility, no excuses, no weasel words, no passive voice, just the raw truth, forced out of him like rot from a wound. For the first time in years, the public saw him without the mask, and they weren't impressed. The media flayed him alive. Headlines: From candidate to con, the fall of Steven Selvers, father exposes son and historic courtroom sting. You don't erase a veteran. Texas learns that the hard way. I'd never gone viral before. But apparently, my voice, my history, and my fight made for damn good clickbait. Podcasts called me a silent hero. Online forums called Steven a political sociopath. Veterans groups offered to fundraise for a memoir. I told them to save their money. Hell, someone even made a t-shirt with my quote, "Truth has teeth. Funny thing is, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. Not from the fight. From the memories it had dragged back up like bones from deep water." Then came the envelope. No return address. Just my name in shaky cursive. I opened it on the porch with a knife I kept in the drawer. Have it. Inside was a photo. A picture of my wife, Annie, at her piano. Hair tied up, laughing. It wasn't when I remembered. It must have been taken by someone else, a moment I hadn't seen. On the back, in ballpoint pen, she deserved better than what we gave her. And below that, in different ink, red, were two words, "It's not over." I stared at it for a long time. The handwriting didn't match Stephen's. Too narrow, too crooked. But the message was clear. Someone else was involved. Someone who knew what he'd done. Maybe someone who helped. And someone who wasn't ready to let it end with a courtroom. I called Marcy. "Did Stephen name anyone in his plea deal?" I asked. "No," she said. "He took the fall alone." "Why?" I read her the note. Heard her breath catch. "You think it's a threat?" "I think it's a crack." "In what?" "In the wall I just tore down. Jack had warned me. Men like your son don't act alone," he'd said. "Power like that always travels in packs. Donors, consultants, friends in high places. If he tried to scrub your record, someone opened the door for him." He was right. This wasn't over. The next day, I went back through the files. Everything Stephen had touched, I reread. Looked for names, signatures, even paper stock. Anything out of place. That's when I found it. A single memo, hidden in the archive request form, typed in Arial instead of Times New Roman, addressed to the director of the Veterans History Archive. Signed, Randall C. Heath. Special Projects, Northlake Strategies. I didn't know the name, but I knew the company. Political Marketing. Reputation Management. The kind of firm that spins mud into champagne, for a price. They didn't just handle campaigns. They handled disappearances. That night, I called an old contact, reporter by the name of Charlie Voss. Used to cover foreign intelligence before he got bored and started digging up domestic dirt for a living. "Charlie," I said, "you ever hear of Northlake Strategies?" "Yeah," he said. "Why?" "Because I think they helped my son try to erase my life." He went quiet. Then, "I've been trying to get inside them for 3 years. What VA you got?" "More than I should. We met the next morning." I handed him the memo. He stared at it like it was a treasure map. "Where'd you get this?" "Buried in court files." "Wrong font gave it away," he grinned. "Damn. You're sharper than half my newsroom." "That's because your newsroom's full of 20-somethings with soft hands and soft spines," he laughed. "You want revenge or exposure?" I looked him in the eye. "I want truth. On record. On video. On front pages. And I want that firm burned so thoroughly they have to rent chairs from hell." Charlie nodded. "Give me a week, back home." I watched the news every night, waiting. Restless. Emily visited twice. Once with chili. Once with photos of Annie from an old box she found in her attic. We didn't talk about Stephen. We didn't need to. Grief comes in many forms, and betrayal is one of them. 6 days later, Charlie called. "I've got your story," he said. Northlake Strategies had dozens of hidden contracts. They'd helped erase military records before, not just mine. They had ties to 4 politicians, 2 judges, and 1 former governor. Stephen had been a small piece in a much bigger machine. And now, that machine was cracking. Stephen tried to destroy one man's story. But the deeper I dug, the more I realized he wasn't just lying about me. He was part of something built on lies. I used to believe the biggest betrayal came from blood. Turns out, that's just the beginning. Because when you go digging for one liar, you often uncover a nest of them, crawling through the cracks, hiding behind titles, foundations, charities, campaigns. My son wanted power, but he wasn't the one holding the leash. He was just obedient enough to be useful, and just arrogant enough to think he was in control. He wasn't. And now the men behind the curtain were nervous. Charlie's exposé dropped on a Thursday. Front page, above the fold, War on Truth, How Political Strategists Erased Veterans to Build Candidates. The article named Randall Heath, former political consultant, now CEO of Northlake Strategies. It detailed how he orchestrated the sanitization of at least 6 veterans' records to fit campaign narratives. All of it backed by documents, emails, testimonies. And right there in the center, my story. Beneath my photo, a grainy black and white from 1973, the caption read, "They tried to erase him. They failed. It went viral in 6 hours." Veterans groups organized marches. 3 state senators publicly severed ties with Northlake. 2 of Heath's staffers flipped and turned over encrypted files. By midnight, Charlie had already scheduled interviews with CNN and 60 Minutes. The machine was dying and making a lot of noise on its way down. And then came the break-in. Friday morning, 2:17 a.m. I heard the back window shatter. Then the sound of boots on linoleum. I didn't freeze. Didn't shout. I'd been waiting. I keep a Mossberg under my bed. Unloaded, but loud when pumped. And sometimes, sound is all you need. I didn't turn on the lights. Just stepped into the hallway, pump action echoing through the house like thunder. "Get out," I growled. "Or you'll need a priest more than a lawyer." I saw movement. Shadow ducking out the back the way it came. Fast. Sloppy. Amateurs. Not assassins. But it wasn't about killing me. It was about intimidation. A warning. I reported it, of course. Cops showed up, asked questions they didn't want answers to, filed a report, shrugged, left. But Emily saw the broken glass when she came by the next afternoon. "Jesus, Grandpa, are you okay?" Nothing broken but their pride. She knelt, started sweeping the shards into a pan. Her hands trembled. "This is getting dangerous." I looked at her. "It was always dangerous. Just took this long for you to see it." She stood. "You should leave town." "I did that once," I said. "Berlin, 73. Didn't end well." She didn't laugh. Later that night, Charlie called. His voice was tight. "Heath's on the move. Trying to cut a deal. Word is, he's planning to throw your son under the bus. Make him the mastermind." I clenched the phone. "He's lying." "Of course he is. But if he gets ahead of the story, then the truth dies in committee." He paused. "You want to stop him?" "Charlie, I didn't survive war, betrayal, and bureaucracy just to lose to a coward in a suit. We made a plan." Charlie had one last ace, a leaked video recording from a Northlake training seminar. It wasn't meant for public eyes, just internal use. In it, Heath bragged about how they reconstructed backgrounds, how they cleaned family records, how even military files aren't immune when you've got the right passwords and the right pressure, and in the middle of it all, Stephen, sitting quietly in the front row, nodding, watching the whole thing. I watched that clip on repeat. Not out of disbelief, but confirmation. He knew, from the beginning. He wasn't manipulated. He was trained. He didn't just try to erase me. He learned how to do it and planned to use it again. So I gave Charlie the green light. "Use it," I said. All of it. He uploaded the video to 3 different sites. Gave it to every news outlet with a working antenna. Included timecodes, faces, quotes. And when the video dropped, everything changed. Monday morning headlines screamed, "Recordings reveal systematic erasure of veterans. Strategist implicated. Selvers exposed again." We made him a nobody. Video blows lit off veteran cover-up scandal. The fallout was swift. Northlake's offices were raided. Heath was arrested in Chicago trying to board a plane to Dubai. Stephen, already disgraced, now faced a second wave of charges: conspiracy, intent to defraud federal agencies, and collusion in the destruction of public records. They couldn't call him naive now. He was a partner. The Department of Justice opened a task force. Veterans Affairs issued a formal apology to me by name. The Pentagon announced a review of all classified veteran archives from the last 20 years. I sat on my porch as it all unfolded, same spot I used to smoke in, same chair Annie bought me for our 35th anniversary. Sunset turning the sky to color of fire. Dog at my feet. World spinning again. Only now it was spinning with the truth. My son tried to erase my story. But in the end, it wasn't just mine he destroyed. It was the whole rotten empire he built it on. Some men go quietly. They accept the lies said about them. The false smiles. The rewritten stories. They shrink to fit someone else's narrative until they disappear altogether. But not me. I don't vanish. I wait. And when the time is right, I speak. 2 weeks after the Heath video exploded, I received an invitation in the mail. Department of Veterans Affairs Ceremonial Recognition and Restoration of Service Record Guest of Honor, Robert G. Selvers. My first reaction? I laughed. 78 years on this planet, and now they want to throw me a medal? Too late. Too clean. Too convenient. I almost threw it out, but then I saw the list of attendees. Veterans, widows, grandkids, kids in ROTC, and Emily's name, right there as the event organizer. She'd helped set the whole thing up. Damn kid. So I went. Not for applause. Not for optics. But because if they were going to tell my story, I wanted to make damn sure they got it right. It was held in the Dallas Memorial Hall, where I once shook hands with a 3-star general back in '85. Packed house. Cameras. Local news. A sea of people in uniforms, not dress blues, but the faded ones. Real ones. People who'd lived hard and served harder. When they called my name, I stood. The room rose with me. I walked up slowly, not because I'm weak, but because I've earned every lymph in my stride. Emily met me halfway. She didn't speak, just handed me the microphone and gave me that look, the one that told me she finally understood. I faced the room, felt all their eyes. And I said, they tried to turn me into a footnote. Said I was confused, broken, bitter. But here's the thing, I was bitter. Bitter that a world I bled for could be twisted so easily. That truth was treated like a product, sold to the highest bidder. My own son tried to bury me in silence. Not with a shovel, with a razor, with lies, with smiles. But the grave he dug for me became his own, because I don't stay buried. To every man in this room who served, and to every woman who waited, you deserve to be remembered for who you were, not who someone else said you were. And to anyone listening, I'll say this. If they come for your story, don't whisper. Roar. The room was silent when I finished. Then the clapping started. I don't remember much after that. Not the photos, the medals, or the speeches. Just one moment, when Emily grabbed my hand and said, "Grandpa, you didn't just get justice. You made history." Stephen was indicted 2 days later on federal conspiracy charges. He cut another deal, this time no way out of prison. 5 years minimum. Maybe more. No more campaigns. No more donors. No more power suits. Just a man alone, staring at a concrete wall, the same way he once wanted me to disappear behind one. I didn't visit. Didn't write. What was there to say? He wrote his ending the day he tried to erase mine. Charlie's story won a National Journalism Award. Braddock got a federal commendation. Jack finally agreed to let his name be used in the documentary after I bribed him with bourbon. And me? I went back to my porch. Back to my chair. My quiet. My country. Not perfect. Not peaceful. But mine again. Sometimes I sit and wonder what Annie would have said about all this. She would have smacked me for not shaving before the ceremony. She would have cried during my speech, even if she wouldn't admit it. And she would have whispered, as she always did after every storm, "Told you." They don't know who they're dealing with. I keep the photo Emily gave me on my desk now. Annie at the piano. A reminder, not of what I lost, but of what they couldn't take. They tried to erase me. Instead, I became unforgettable.